Hey there, it's Monday, brand new week. Glad you're here as always with us on IB Nation Sports Talk. Vince D'Addario is usually here with me to start the week, but he is on vacation today. I'm going to be on vacation next week, and by the time I get back, I'll be gearing up for the start of Notre Dame's fall training camp because as of right now, we're just 47 days away from Notre Dame against Ohio State, which means 2 weeks from today, when I return from my vacation, we'll be 33 days away from the kickoff to Notre Dame and the football season. So looking forward to that. Before I go any further, of course, the quick reminder, hit the like button, subscribe, rate us, like us, follow us on whatever platform you happen to be on. Do appreciate you. Thanks for listening, as always. So no Vince today, and nobody else for that matter, for a little bit anyway. All the pinch hitters are working tonight. So a little bit different show than usual tonight, but coming up in a few minutes here, I'm going to have an interview with the new Notre Dame baseball coach, Shawn Stiffler. That is on the way. If you're watching live on the YouTube right now, feel free maybe to throw in a question or two if you have any. We, try to get to some here tonight. Hope you had a good weekend, though. We went to Chicago Saturday night. Saw the comedian John Mulaney at the United Center. First time there. First time seeing him. I've seen some of his Netflix specials and stuff like that. But pretty good show. Pretty good show all the way around, I thought. Kind of laid low yesterday. It was rainy here in town, so not a whole lot going on, but something kind of cool happened yesterday. And that's what I kind of wanted to start off with first today. If you follow me on Twitter, you may have seen some pictures that I posted yesterday, Sunday. Anyway, they were from a bowling event here in town that took place Sunday morning. So my daughter has special needs and, she's very personable, likes to talk a lot, all that kind of stuff, but she has both developmental delays and some medical and physical issues as well that force her, she uses a power wheelchair to get around outside the house, uses a walker to get around inside the house. But she's involved in a few different programs here in the area that kind of keep her involved, doing some different things, and all that kind of stuff. And one of those is a place called the Rosie Place. And so yesterday they're doing this bowling event and at one of the local bowling alleys. I don't have to say which one, but my wife signed my daughter up for the event and head out to get there at 10 o'clock yesterday morning. So it's like, oh, cool. There's going to be some bowling and stuff like that. She always has fun doing that kind of thing. So they get there and all of a sudden there are these big guys in green t-shirts who start rolling in. And the next thing you know, well, it's not just big guys in green t-shirts. It's Marcus Freeman as well. That's right. The head coach, of course, of the Notre Dame football team. So it turns out that all those football players were there to help out with this bowling event. And it wasn't just football players. There were also some athletes from other sports like Dara Mabry, Sonia Citron from the Notre Dame women's basketball team were there. And, and again, some athletes from some of the other sports as well. The majority were football players, though. But they were there. And what they were there to do was help out all these special needs people with their bowling. Like they have these, I should have imported the pictures to the YouTube so you could see them, but they have these, if you've ever been to one of these bowling alleys, they have these assistive devices. It's like a metal ramp, and so if you can't actually throw the ball, you can set the ball on the ramp and then it rolls down the alley and does that kind of thing down the alley. And of course, if you're in a wheelchair, you probably need something like that. So they're out there helping these special needs people with their bowling and laughing, joking, having a good time with them and all this different stuff. And so again, if like you can see, post my name, in the YouTube, Shawn Stiers, at Shawn Stiers is my Twitter handle. You can see those photos if you'd like to. But you can see in the pictures that I posted, Marcus Freeman's there, hands-on. He's out there helping. He kind of started off doing a little bowling, stuff like that. J.D. Bertrand is there. Tyler Buckner is there. Plenty of others as well. And it's specific to my daughter, a guy named Eddie Scheidler, who's a walk-on safety, was out there helping as well. Got a little insight, by the way, on what they said the toughest part of summer training. Weights in the morning is relatively easy, is what they said, but it's the running in the afternoon because it gets hot and muggy. And like if you're in South Bend right now, it's been a little warmer and muggier today. And it's like that out there right now. So weights in the morning is the easy part, but then you get to the afternoon when it's out there in the heat of the day and the muggy humidity and all that stuff. That's the harder part. But, again, so you've got all these athletes out there and head coach Marcus Freeman helping out at this special needs event at the bowling alley. It's pretty cool. Not unheard of. Brian Kelly's teams did some of that kind of stuff in the past. Sometimes you'd see Brian Kelly, sometimes you wouldn't. But the difference between those Brian Kelly events and yesterday is yesterday was basically an incognito event. When Brian Kelly did that kind of stuff, the media was usually alerted in advance, not to tell the public about it, but what? To make sure there were cameras there to take pictures and shoot the video for the TV and reporters there, to write the kind of feel-good fluff story about how the players are doing good things in the community and that kind of stuff. And I'm not saying, that's not a good thing or, that's a bad thing by any means. It's good for people to see that kind of stuff, and the Notre Dame players doing that kind of stuff. I don't have a problem with that, but I just really, I think it's refreshing to see an event like this. There was no coordinated media exposure going into this. They're just out there to be there, not because somebody's going to see them be there. What's the saying? Your true character shows when nobody's watching. Well, here's Marcus Freeman picking up bowling balls, helping kids roll the balls, and actually interacting with people, taking a picture or two with people. No transactional expectations in return. And I think that's a big difference between this current regime and the old regime. Just the authenticity that you get from Marcus Freeman, to see him out there doing that kind of stuff. Because again, if Brian Kelly, when he was even at that event, he'd maybe be walking around, do his CEO stuff, stand off to the side, wouldn't have been picking up the bowling balls for special needs kids in wheelchairs and helping them roll them down the lane. That's for the players to do. But that's what Marcus Freeman was out there doing. And, again, I get it. A lot of people are over Brian Kelly. So am I. But again, the difference in the authenticity of the two is the difference in where the Notre Dame program is going right now. And as our old friend Drunk Vigo says, BK was always, what's in it for me, bro? And that is exactly right. He would just pound the table, traits over talent. Marcus Freeman's out there getting commitments, to come in, more talent coming in for Marcus Freeman. Because Freeman connects with people because of that authenticity. Not, it's real. It's not contrived. It's not what's in it for me. Brian Kelly's got that political background in him. And, that's how it always came across to me. It's, like when you're a politician, you're out there in front of people, you put on the show for the cameras, right? You're kissing babies and all that kind of stuff. You manicure your public perception. Marcus Freeman doesn't need to manicure and manufacture anything. He's just real. And, yesterday was another example of that. And if my wife hadn't taken the pictures and I hadn't tweeted them, you might not even have known something like that even happened. Because, again, there wasn't a lot of orchestrated, pre-planned, there was no what's in it for me for Marcus Freeman and the athletes out there. And, again, I found it pretty telling that not just Marcus Freeman, but you've got leaders of the team like J.D. Bertrand, Tyler Buckner. They were out there as well, and a lot of other guys as well. And again, it wasn't just the football team. There were athletes from other teams out there from Notre Dame, but it was predominant to the football team, and Marcus Freeman was front and center out there. So it was a cool event. And again, like, we didn't even know that any of these Notre Dame athletes were going to be there because the event was set up through a third party. The Rosie Place is one of them. It's a respite place for special needs people in this area. And they were putting on this event, and they just said, hey, we're going to have a bowling event. It's going to be, this Sunday morning from 10 until noon. And then you roll in and there's all these football players and Marcus Freeman and all these other athletes. So, there was no, publicity in advance of all that. I think they probably did it that way so that the fan, like moms and dads, didn't say, hey, grandma and grandpa or Uncle Bob or, whoever it happened to be, the football team's going to be down there. You want to go get some autographs, that kind of stuff, because the whole play, it was a private event reserved for this group. And again, the hats off to Marcus Freeman and his players and all the other players from the different sports who were out there as well yesterday. Really cool that they were able to do something like that. And again, it wasn't, if you look on, I haven't been able to find anything else on social media, even social media, any other media on this. This was all just they were doing it to do it, not out there to be seen doing it. No, what's in it for me by any means. So really cool. And, again, hats off, kudos to Marcus Freeman and all the athletes who showed up yesterday with basically nothing expected in return. I thought that was really cool. Speaking of Brian Kelly, did you see SEC Media Days started today? And he was the first coach up earlier today. And he was asked if he thinks that Notre Dame is going to join a conference. His response, quote, "It's probably not been high on my list of things to think about. I've been trying to correct a slice for the last couple of weeks, and I haven't had much success with that," end quote. That's from Brian Kelly. So golf it is for Brian Kelly. So much for shopping down a different aisle. He's just shopping remotely from the pro shop now, I guess. Marcus Freeman's out there putting together either the number 1 or number 2 ranked recruiting class in the country, depending on what day it happens to be. And Brian Kelly's working on his slice out there. He's recruiting more and more like Tyrone Willingham, I guess. But Kelly was asked if lopsided losses to Alabama motivated him to move to LSU, which, he said that was not part of my decision making. So I didn't get to see all of his press conference. I wish I had hit record earlier so I could have recorded some of it. I did see him do an interview afterwards with some of the people on the SEC network. Not, it was pretty canned type stuff. Kelly was, though, asked about the possibility of Notre Dame joining a conference, and he said, quote, "I would say that certainly Notre Dame is still a coveted university. Jack Swarbrick knows what he's doing. He's got his ear to the ground," end quote. So, as far as the musical chairs on Notre Dame's spot in the musical chairs, maybe they're better positioned than some. And, so again, nothing really earth shattering from Brian Kelly on whether Notre Dame will or won't, join a conference, any of that stuff. Interesting report came out today from CBS Sports that Notre Dame is looking for $75 million in its next TV contract from NBC. And they're basically getting between $15 and $22 million. I guess the contract that they currently have at NBC is backloaded, but that's what they're looking at right now. So they are shooting for $75 million, which would still be not as much as the $100 million plus that members of the Big Ten or SEC are getting. But, if you look at this, there wasn't a whole lot of detail in it. Essentially, that's what Notre Dame is looking for. NBC wants to get more value out of what it's doing with its Saturdays, because they only still have Notre Dame right now. And so they're looking to add, there's been the different reports, and we've kind of talked about this before. NBC they've been in talks with the Big Ten. Maybe that happens, that they wouldn't necessarily have the full Big Ten package, but they could have Big Ten games. I think the price of that is obviously driving up, but now there's apparently more interest with the Big 12 as well. So like you would have Notre Dame, and maybe you've got a Notre Dame Big 12 or Big 10 type doubleheader going on a Saturday. And when Notre Dame is playing road games and they don't have a Notre Dame game, maybe, they're showing a Big 12 or a Big 10 game, that kind of thing. So that would be, and they're looking at that, like they would apparently, according to this report, be more willing to get closer to that $75 million price tag that Notre Dame is still reportedly looking for, because they would have more value, more overall value, if they also had another networks games to go with it. So that's interesting. Well, I think we'll kind of touch on that more as the week goes on, tomorrow or Wednesday. But interesting that came out, that $75 million is reportedly the price that Notre Dame is looking for, which would be, again, if they're around $15 million right now, that's a big step up from what they are making right now. SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey at the SEC Media Days, he kind of did his State of the Conference press conference to start things off. He talked about college football changing and referenced the Bob Dylan song, the times they are a-changing and all that stuff. And here's the quote from Greg Sankey. It's never going to be the same, but it doesn't have to be the way that it is. We're dealing with complex problems that won't be solved by complaints, accusations, finger pointing, or simple solutions. What's needed now is collaboration, end quote. And the most interesting part of that comment, I thought, was kind of at the end where Sankey says, what's needed now is collaboration. Because with all the talk about, the SEC and the Big Ten getting ready to take over college football, Sankey's still talking about collaboration right now. We've kind of talked about this here on this show too, and I can read into that comment whatever way. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's good for anyone, including the SEC, for it to basically be like the SEC, the Big Ten, and everybody else, the way a lot of people think that it's pointing to right now. The SEC has already accounted for 12 of the last 15 national championships, so I'm not sure how much more they can get. But he goes on to say, quote, the Southeastern Conference is stronger now than at any point in our history. We are a super league. This is a super league, end quote. And it is a super league. But I don't think he wants it to be the only league, because they've got Texas and Oklahoma coming in. So they'll have 16 teams when they join the league in a couple of years. And I'm sure that as much as he'd love, to have Notre Dame, he also doesn't want to see Notre Dame join the Big Ten. Again, something we've talked about here. So you got to work together. You got to collaborate, like he was talking about. Keep that path to the college football playoff open for Notre Dame, but also, to get that college football playoff expansion. But it's also good for the SEC as well, because an expanded playoff means the SEC obviously gets more teams in. And that's why Jack Swarbrick and Greg Sankey were part of that committee that put together the 12-team expansion proposal last year. Do we get 12? I don't know. I've got to think that, again, with things lining up the way they're lining up right now, with all these teams going to either the Big Ten or the SEC, I've got to think that it's going to go to at least 12. But again, conference commissioners, all these people have to vote on it. So that's still kind of a long, I don't know if it's a long way off, but it's again, we've got the current plan that we've got through 2025, and that's also when Notre Dame's TV contract ends. I think that it's going to be at least 12 by the time they roll out a new college football playoff in 2026. And again, we can kind of touch on that some more throughout the course of the week. We're at the All-Star break for baseball, and I know that doesn't move the needle. Baseball doesn't move the needle big time for a lot of people, but we've got the Notre Dame baseball coach coming up here in a minute. But Albert Pujols in the home run derby tonight, and you've got Pete Alonso going for his third straight derby title, and Alonso is just crushing him. It's at Dodger Stadium in LA. Pujols has the worst odds to make the final at plus 650. And I mean, let's be honest, if you're not really a baseball fan, really the Vegas odds are all that matters, right? So here's the bracket for the home run derby tonight. Kyle Schwarber's the top seed, 29 home runs going into the break, second most in baseball behind Aaron Judge, and he's going to face Pujols in the first round. Pujols only has 6, but he's kind of in there, 42-year-old, gonna give it a shot in the home run derby his last time around. So it'll be Schwarber and Pujols in the first round. Juan Soto and Jose Ramirez. That should be a good matchup. That's the 4 versus the 5 seed. Soto is the 4 seed. Ramirez from Cleveland is the 5 seed. Julio Rodriguez with 16 home runs going into the break. Corey Seager with 22. They are matched up in the first round. And then the 7 seed versus the 2 seed, or the 7 seed. Ronald Acuna Jr. has 8 home runs against Pete Alonso with his 24 home runs in the first round. So those are the first round matchups of the Derby tonight. Here are some odds for tonight's Derby. Because again, it's like I found these as interesting as anything. You get plus 160 odds that there will be one 500 plus foot home run hit in the Derby tonight. Plus 160. So not too bad odds on that. Minus 115 that Alonso and Schwarber each win their first round matchup. I mean, that's, minus 115. I don't think I just wouldn't want it because there's not enough value in it. Odds to win. Alonso's the favorite at plus 185. Schwarber has the second best odds at plus 290. I like those odds a lot better. Alonso has just crushed it in these home run derbies the last couple of times. He's shown that he can do it. Schwarber's really swinging it this year. I kind of like him, especially with those plus 290. Soto has plus 600. Acuna has plus 750. Rodriguez plus 850. Seager plus 10,000 odds to win it all. So that's kind of what you got if you're watching the home run derby tonight. Those are some odds for the derby and some of the first round matchups as well. I'll probably watch for a little bit. I don't know exactly how long I'll watch. Better Call Saul's coming on later tonight. So it's like, I love baseball, but we're down to the final 5 episodes of Saul. So I'm going to be tuned in there one way or another tonight. But you got Schwarber and Pujols in the first round. I'd be shocked if Pujols can get out of the first round of the home run derby tonight in Los Angeles. All right. So promised you the interview, and we are not even 1 week, I guess, not even 1 week into the tenure of Shawn Stiffler, the new Notre Dame baseball coach. He was just introduced at his press conference last week. So that is what we're going to do right now. We're going to shift gears and full disclosure, I talked to Shawn earlier today. We usually pre-record the interviews when we can, but because we try to accommodate the schedules of our guests and stuff like that. So we'll jump over to Shawn Stiffler. I was with him earlier today. Well, we are glad to welcome to the show today the new Notre Dame baseball coach, Shawn Stiffler. Coach, thanks for taking some time. I imagine your days are pretty busy right now, huh?
Yeah, no question. Just trying to get ourselves organized and get to work on, getting back on campus. That's the big thing. I want to get boots on the ground, but trying to assemble staff, trying to speak to all the current members of the roster, the incoming players, the 23s and 24 recruits. And then you had the Major League Draft going on right now.
Exactly.
Several guys are involved in that, and just trying to get a feel for how I can support that. I know I'm kind of late to the party on some of this stuff, but want to be support for those guys as well. So it's, all good things, but, certainly I wish there was a few more hours in the day.
Well, I would imagine that just this last week, you're back in Virginia right now, trying to take care of some things there, but I would imagine it's been quite a bit of a whirlwind for you, hasn't it? Just kind of here and there and everywhere, and just kind of what you touched on right there, all the phone calls you've got to make and everything else.
Absolutely. Just from, really when Jody Sadler and I first had to talk about the opportunity at Notre Dame, things have moved so quickly since then, and within a week and a half to 2 weeks, you're at a press conference, with your family, and you're trying to find a new place to live and trying to learn a whole new roster and trying to make new relationships. And so it's been really rewarding. Everyone has been as wonderful as advertised. What a community South Bend is and the University of Notre Dame is. But yeah, certainly you feel, you're kind of torn, between being a dad, buying a house, finding a school, setting a roster, trying to still clean some things up at VCU. I'm an employee still at VCU, so trying to clean that up. So there's still a lot of things that have to be cleaned up, but we're working through it.
Well, yeah, you talked the other day about you get that phone call, the South Bend area code, and what kind of thought when you're sitting there and then all of a sudden there's a phone call from Notre Dame?
You just try to reflect on, really the reasons why you would want to explore this community, why you'd want to leave VCU, why you'd want to take on the challenge of Notre Dame. And then you're trying to, make sure that the person on the other line of the call understands why that's important to you as well.
Right.
Like I said, I had gotten a text message the night before about the possibility of speaking, and then when Jody reached out, and that conversation was as comfortable as could be. She did such a wonderful job of making me feel comfortable and really keeping things um, at a level where it was really about the person, which made me understand very quickly that they were looking that everything about Notre Dame is about fit and finding the right person, coach, educator, and so that made me feel much more comfortable from the start. They did a great job in that process, but like I said, when that phone rang, you take a deep breath before you say hello.
Well, and it was obvious listening to you at your press conference the other day, just how much Notre Dame means to you. You talked about growing up in Western Pennsylvania and watching Ron Paulus run around and all that stuff, and then lo and behold, there's Ron Paulus at the press conference, and Marcus Freeman too. You're a head coach, obviously, but is it kind of a little surreal when have those kind of moments like that right out of the gate?
Well, yeah, and you talk about sticking your foot in your mouth right out of the gate, with Ron Paulus. But I do remember him, and he was such a great player from the state of Pennsylvania, and remember him going to Notre Dame, and that was to have him there was, and he's awesome. He came up and high fived me right away, so he was awesome. But then for Coach Freeman to be there really that really meant something to me. I know how busy he is. I know how much demand he is. And it's unbelievable. After he said congratulations to me, the first thing he said is, "Where's your family? How can I meet them?" And I thought that was just a lot about who he is. And of course, he has a big family himself. And so just said a lot about him. And he made himself so available to us and told me anything that I'd want to talk about. And of course, who else's mind would you want to pick other than his? I mean, he has made what looks like recruiting easy over the last year, over the last several months. But certainly want to get in contact with him and use him as a resource. I know how busy they're going to be, but to have him there, to be able to shake his hand and then have all the other coaches come up and say hello, you can really get the idea of it is a family there. And that was one of the things that really made the decision much easier for me.
Absolutely. And you mentioned someone else in your press conference who had that you kind of leaned on a little bit through this process. Brian O'Connor, who was, of course, back in the Palmineri days when they went to the College World Series in 2002. He was, the pitching coach here at Notre Dame. He's been at Virginia it's hard to believe it's been going on 20 years now at this point. But you've obviously gone head to head with Virginia. You've got to know Brian O'Connor out there. And it's also obvious that, he's got a lot of love for this. I saw him out in Omaha this time around and talked to him a little bit. Still got, some love for Notre Dame. And what's maybe the most important thing that Brian O'Connor told you and imparted on you when you were talking with him about this?
Really, for me, it was, him reiterating how special of a place it was. That his family, that in many ways he still feels like at times it's home. Many of his lifelong friends are still in South Bend. And so how he let me know how wonderful the people were, how much my family would love it here. He let me know how special the place is. And then he just kind of felt like that I was a good fit for it. He just was pretty adamant to me that a lot of the things and values that I have and the things that I find important in the program would fit at Notre Dame. And he felt like that I should really, really consider it and felt like it would be a really good match for me, my family, and for the style of program I wanted to run. And so that meant a lot to me, to be quite honest with you. I mean, he's somebody whose program I've looked up to. I mean, he changed baseball in the state of Virginia, to be honest with you. When UVA got here, the way that they went about things made the rest of us have to get better quick, to be quite honest with you, if we wanted to keep up, and not sure we still are. But I just really respect Coach O'Connor, the way he goes about things, the way he leads his teams, leads his staff. And so he gave me a lot of confidence in my conversation. I'm not going to, reveal everything we talked about, but he gave me a lot of confidence in this being the right job for me. And then I got to be honest with you, Palmineri sent me a text message after the press conference that was really some beautiful words, and again reassured me how special the place is, and how important the job is and how important the brand is and how wonderful it is to represent the brand in the university. And that really meant a lot to me as well. So, both those guys have really been on board. I don't know Paul nearly as well as I know Brian. We haven't crossed paths, but certainly Coach O'Connor and Paul Maneri set the benchmark pretty high here.
Yeah, absolutely. And you'll find out as your time goes on what an asset Paul Maneri can be. I'm sure just the fact that you've already got that text from him, I think, says a lot right there. And you talk about how Brian O'Connor kind of changed baseball in the state of Virginia, and between your playing days at George Mason and then obviously coaching there and coaching at Virginia Commonwealth, you've been in that area for a long time. You've played a lot of those ACCs, including Virginia, some of those head-to-heads, with Virginia and some of these other ACC schools. Does the familiarity that you have does it help you now as you make this step into the ACC?
I don't know if anything will ever get you comfortable and ready to play that schedule. It's very daunting when you look at it. And as I was looking at the 23 schedule and you see those 10 weekends lined up, you're thinking, oh boy, what did I get myself into?
It'll look different. Yeah,
that's right. But certainly, being in the Virginia, North Carolina, the Mid-Atlantic region, you do run into, whether it's UVA, Chapel Hill, Duke, NC State, you run into them recruiting, Virginia Tech, and you also run into them on your schedule. And that had always been a goal of mine at VCU, was to schedule those types of teams in our midweeks, in our non-conference, to put our team in position to one, have an NCAA schedule, but also you knew that you were probably, if you're going to make the NCAA, one of those teams were going to host you probably.
Yeah.
And so to be in those venues, to be in front of those crowds was always important to me. And so I do feel like I understand the league. I do understand the coaches and have relationships with many of them. So I do feel like I am prepared from that standpoint. But, like I said, when you look at that schedule and think about 30 games against that type of competition, it can be daunting at times. And so we'll really have to break this down to, the old cliche, one game at a time, one pitch at a time. But if I get my head looking beyond anything in this league, we're going to you can get your butt kicked quick.
Yeah, well, fortunately, you've got several months before those first games actually come around. But I guess you kind of had a good opening weekend this past weekend, it sounds like, just in terms of, you talked about reaching out to players and stuff like that. You kind of had your first win without ever having to step on the field. Jack Findlay has decided to, pull his name out of the transfer portal and stay here at Notre Dame. So I guess, some thoughts on that, and maybe, whatever you can, reveal about maybe what you and Jack talked about after you got to talk to him for the first time.
And really, Jack was always very committed to Notre Dame. He was. This was where he wanted to be. He understands how special of a place the University of Notre Dame is. He understands how important that degree is, the education is, and how life-changing it can be. And he was very happy, loves his teammates, loves what we still have left to do in the program. He just wanted to know who the head coach was going to be. He just wanted to know what the next steps of the program was going to be and how that was going to impact his development. And so it was really just getting on the phone with him and his family and reiterating a lot of our core values that were important to us, not only from a team standpoint, excuse me, but from a pitching development standpoint. And, my background is in pitching, so I felt very comfortable having those conversations. And we laid out for him really our step-by-step process that we go through when it comes to how we want to develop pitchers and how we want to use that to help us win games and win championships. And his family was great about it. They were great about it. I think it was just the unknown. And like I said, he never wavered, and his teammates never wavered from wanting him to get back here as quickly as possible. It was very obvious to me what an important piece he is, not only on the field, but in the locker room and around the university. And so it was great. Like I said, I was looking for a house. I was looking for a house when he called me. I was going through a house. I ran outside, took the call. He called me, and I said, "Well, now I'm buying this house," and I bought that house.
My lucky house. Can't
Yeah,
move out of that one.
tell my wife, when we're done, wrap it up because this is good luck here. So he's awesome family, awesome young man. Obviously, going to be a huge piece to what we're doing moving forward, and I'm excited to work with him.
Well, whether it's him or there are other guys in the portal, obviously, too, and you're talking to all these guys as much as you can, but you're a new head coach and you're essentially thrust into this situation now. How challenging, can it be when you don't have a previous relationship with these guys and you're quite, it's almost like speed dating. It seems like it's like, you sit down and you give them your sales pitch and here's what I'm all about. How challenging is that?
It's extremely challenging. Probably the most difficult part right now because you can't give as much time as you'd like to every person. And to be honest with you, I'm still probably not fully through the list. Maybe fully through the list on text messaging and different things like that. But we do have some guys, like I said, guys who have entered the portal more so because of the draft. More so because of the draft and the help they're planning on signing. But you also have the 23s and the 24s who you can't contact you and try to locate where they are. But as far as the message goes, you just have to reiterate that the reasons, the major reasons why they chose the University of Notre Dame, the experience, the education, the life-changing degree, and championship style baseball has not changed.
Right.
That piece has not changed, and I'm not here to change that. I am here to be a resource for them. I'm here to be an asset to them. And then you just got to be yourself. Be yourself on the phone and let them know that you genuinely care about them. And I'm smart enough to understand the job that the previous staff did and that they were planning on being here for a long time. And so the recruits, the players, the development that they had that they were doing, is really good. And so those players on the other line of that phone are really good. And so there's no reason for me to come in here and be like, oh, we're going to reevaluate everything and make sure everything is, that you're a player that's good enough. I'm pretty trusting and enough from national rankings and you can do enough research to know that these guys are the type of men and players that we want at Notre Dame. And so, really for me, it's just continue to plug through this call list and continue to let guys know I'm here for them. Call me anytime. You have my number. But it's hard to keep up when you get these area codes and numbers coming up and you don't know who they are. And
Sure.
you just drive into the grocery store the other day. You stop and there's 25 texts in the 5-minute drive, and you're trying to get back to them. But that's part of the job, and building those relationships is my favorite part of the job. So, really that piece just comes with the scenario right now.
Yeah, such a big part of it, obviously. You were able to add some more arms out of the transfer portal as well. I don't know if, things, T's are crossed and I's are dotted, if what you're allowed to say. Can you talk about those guys at all?
Well, a couple of them were here already were recruited by the former staff and got it in the master's program prior to me getting the job. So it was more about me just again getting, Healy and Bosch and those guys were more about me getting in contact with them and just being like, hey, let's go. We're ready to go, man. Reaffirming everything. We are continuously working in that transfer portal and from the grad standpoint would like to add another piece or two. Because again, I think the draft is going to hit us. It hit us last night in the first rounder and Owen Murphy, and so I think the draft is going to impact us more. And Notre Dame has been an older team for the last 2 years with a decent amount of grad transfers, so everyone we lose is playing a big part right now. And so we just want to make sure that those guys understand that we are got to still keep recruiting and we got to keep, it's not an easy place to find transfers that fit, but there are still some good ones out there and some options. And we're working on that right now.
Healy from David, both of them right-handers, Healy from Davidson and Bosch from Georgetown. But Healy, obviously, you saw in the conference out there in the A10. So it looks like he looks like a pretty good one to be coming in here for you.
Both him and Bosch are both really good ones, and Healy, of course, I'm tired of him beating up on us, but no, he is a low to mid 90s fastball guy with a ton of run, and and as good of a slider as there probably is in the country. And so he'll have an impact right away on what we're trying to do. So yeah, excited about all those guys. Excited about we have a good set of grad guys returning. It was very obvious to me from the returning players they didn't feel like they were done, that they were ready to continue to keep this thing moving forward, continue to push it, and so excited to get the opportunity to work with them.
Well, yeah, you were talking about the portal, and between that and the extra year of COVID eligibility, these things that just the way things have changed in the last few years, how much has that really kind of changed your job the last couple of years, the way you have to do things?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly has, and I think that's relative to where you are, and Notre Dame is unique to that. And I think one of the things that will always help Notre Dame is just the experience that the student athlete is going to get. Everyone who's at Notre Dame understands it's more than just the baseball side of it. There, obviously that's a big piece, but the education piece, the experience piece, what it means to have that degree as you move throughout your work life and move into employment. I just think that a lot of those kids understand that this is where they need to be, that this is the best opportunity for them. And then on the flip side, it's not going to be as easy for us to access portal guys, transfer guys, as maybe a lot of other schools. So it will not be the most critical part of our recruiting. We will still recruit high school players, the best in the country, the best student athletes in the country, and that will be the backbone of the program moving forward.
You were talking, pitching obviously is such a big part of your background. You were a pitcher in college and a pitching coach before you became a head coach. Is there, like, when you look at pitchers specifically, certain characteristics maybe you're looking for when you're going out looking for a guy?
Well, number one is athleticism. We like to recruit athletes for certain, especially on the mound as well. Looking for athletic guys. Athletic guys can repeat their delivery. Guys who can repeat their delivery, throw more strikes. And I said in the press conference, I'm a big believer in strikes. I understand the analytics. I like to think I'm up to speed enough on the analytics that I can talk about it. But at the same time, I still believe in strikes, especially at the amateur level. I think you have to be able to command the zone and force the other team to do something to beat you. So athleticism, looking for strikes, and then the last piece, the two last pieces, competitiveness, which is the hardest thing to figure out today.
Right.
Because you just don't get the opportunity to see the guys in those settings as much as you used to be able to, and competitiveness, but I also believe that if you've done the things academically and have taken on the rigors it takes to go to a place like Notre Dame, you're pretty competitive. Like, you're pretty focused. You're a pretty competitive person. And then the last piece for me is the breaking ball. We're going to look for guys that certainly are going to be able to match what they can do with their fastball command with that breaking ball as well. I think that's a separator, at this level.
You were talking the other day about, when it comes to your lineup, you don't want people to know the difference between the top and bottom of your lineup. And I guess I've never really heard it maybe expressed that way, but it makes sense. Obviously, how would you maybe kind of describe your overall offensive approach that you guys that you've traditionally had?
Yeah, I think it starts with, like I said a little bit, you got to get to second base somehow. All right. You have to be able, you either have to slug your way to second base or you have to be able to run your way to second base.
Yeah.
But you got to be able to get to second base. And so that's the first thing I think in the recruiting process is, how does this guy get to second base? Okay. And from there, you're looking for athletes that can do multiple things. I don't ever want to lose a game because we only had 7 hits or we only had 5 hits. On the days we're not hitting, we still need to be able to produce offense. And I think offense and hitting are two different things. The ability to take extra bases, the ability to take the free base when it's given to you, whether it's through a walk, an error, a hit by pitch, your ability to pressure the other team. I call it lengthening and shortening the field. We want guys who can force the infield to play deep, and when they do, we're going to bunt on them. And and we want to be able to have enough guys in our lineup who can run, that the pitcher's worried about doing multiple things on the mound as opposed to just getting a guy out. And when the pitcher makes those mistakes, We want guys in the lineup, you can hit them in the gap. And so, so we're really looking for that versatile guy. But it does start with them being able to understand and having the baseball IQ to control their at-bats, know what they're looking for, get good pitches, control the zone, and really be able to create offense on days when we're not just hitting. I think it's unrealistic in the ACC to think you're just going to hit your way to first place.
Right.
I don't think you can do that. You have to be able to score against these arms in a variety of different ways, and that's what, to be honest with you, Notre Dame has done the last couple years, and is a style that I've always enjoyed as well. So, and we played a very big ballpark here when I was at VCU. So we had to be creative. We had to do those things. Now, again, I like home runs and I like doubles, so we're not going away from that. But just that versatility. Like I said, I want to have the type of athletes that when you come to the ballpark, that the bottom doesn't have a distinction, in the middle doesn't have a distinction. I want to be able to create something every inning if we can.
Yeah, I mean, you'll see it soon enough, but depending on which direction the wind's blowing there at X Stadium, that your offense keeps you consistent. That's right. That's for sure. That's for sure. You touched on your staff off the top, and I got just a couple more questions here, and I'll let you get going. But do you feel like breaking any news, or are you close to being able to announce? I know Rich Witten from your staff there at VCU, got a head coaching job, so I'm sure that kind of maybe changes things a little bit for you in terms of who you might have had.
Sure, and Rich probably would have been maybe the leading candidate at VCU had I left as well.
That makes sense. Yeah.
He's going to do great things at FIU. I'm close. I'm working through it. And, you have background checks, you have things, these guys are at other schools. They have recruits, you want to do it right. You want people to be able to, in the world of social media, an example of that before you're able to tell people the way you want to be able to tell them. And so we're working through it, and the jobs are being posted as we speak. And so hopefully I'm hoping by the end of this week to have two guys that we can call our assistant coaches, and then support staff as well.
All right. Sounds good. Final thing. 1999, real quick. You're in college at George Mason. The movie American Pie is released. Has your life been forever changed since American Pie came out?
Shawn, we're getting to the point now where the current student athlete has no idea about those movies. That's how old that's how old I'm getting. Is that true. But for the first couple years, you would make a call to a recruit, and they would be like, "What? Stiffler? That's on." And so it was, showing my ID at the airport, showing my ID was always you would get the second look, but no, and obviously that came back out when I was introduced. I saw all the "it's Stiffler time" memes and things like that. So. I remember seeing that movie for the first time, knew nothing about it, and saw it with some friends. And, for one of the first lines is "Party at Stifler's house tonight."
That's right.
Just like, what? But yeah, no, it's an, infamous, I guess would be the right word, right? So
that's right. The amount of Stiffler references we've had just talking about you, over the last couple of weeks. It's there've been a few. There've been a few. That's right.
It's my generation's Animal House.
There you go. That's right. Shawn Stiffler, the brand new head coach at the University of Notre Dame. Hey, congratulations again on this position, and I know everyone's excited to see your guys in action once the season gets started out there. So good luck to you and your family, and we'll see you out there soon.
Thanks, Shawn. Go Irish.
All right, so I had to unmute myself here real quick. I've made that mistake before and not unmuted myself. So that is the new head coach of Notre Dame baseball, Shawn Stiffler. And, again, couldn't talk officially about who the assistants on his staff are going to be. There was a report out from Kendall Rogers from D1Baseball.com today that looks like he's going to be bringing his pitching coach with him here to Notre Dame. So look forward to that, kind of seeing what the rest of the staff looks like as well. So a lot of different stuff going on. I think the biggest thing, they were able to get Jack Findlay to stay. He was able to get Jack Findlay to stay, the freshman All-American, the lefty, and you would look for Findlay to be probably right up there, in front of the rotation type guy, or at least a weekend starter next year. And, depending on how closely you follow college baseball, midweek games typically refer, like if you say it's a midweek game, you're referring to a non-conference game that's taking place typically Tuesday, Wednesday, maybe Thursday. Sometimes by the time you get into ACC play, you're not playing too many Thursday games. But then your weekend starters, your Friday guy is your ace, and then Saturday and Sunday. So we'll look for Findlay to definitely most likely be a weekend guy next year after the kind of year that he had this year as a freshman. Like Aaron Heilman, for example, was Paul Maneri's closer his freshman year, and then he was just a workhorse starter for the next 3 years, before he was drafted by the New York Mets in the first round ultimately. So best of luck to Shawn Stiffler, and a good sport for, playing along with the American Pie reference as well, because as you know, a lot of people have, again, a lot of Stiffler references and American Pie references that we've had since Shawn Stiffler became the head coach. But a lot of great insight from him on a lot of different stuff there as he's taken over just within the last week at Notre Dame. So that's going to do it for today. Great to have you with us here today. Don't forget, like, subscribe, rate us, comment, and all that good stuff on your different podcast platforms. Great to have you. We'll get into some more Notre Dame football discussion on tomorrow's show. And I've got another baseball interview coming later in the week. I've got one of the pitchers from Notre Dame's 2002 College World Series team, Chris Niesel, is going to be joining me later in the week as well. So looking forward to that. And thanks again for stopping by today. Again, a little bit different today, but glad to have you with us for the show today. And we will talk to you tomorrow on IB Nation